The Vigor Endgame doesn't exist. There are features in this game meant for players who want to push to the limits, but really, all in all, there isn't an endgame that exists in any real capacity. So what has to be done, or what can be done, in order to fix this issue and create an endgame for those players who have been here long enough to be thinking about that point? And that will be the purpose of this video. So let's just get right into this. Alright, so the most popular answer for what could be done to fix the Vigor endgame is shelter upgrades. Shelter upgrades would provide more upgrades to grind for and would fall in line with the original grind that ran the game, and I am totally in support with this idea, but I really think people in general place too much pressure into how much this would actually end up fixing. First of all, I'd like to raise the question: how many of you guys actually have maxed out shelters, or really even care about upgrading your shelters? As is, would adding more upgrades even change that? And while it would be more content, there's a high chance large groups of players would simply ignore its addition, as they already do many of the high tier upgrades. And yes, there are players who already have maxed out shelters and would be interested in this, but they are the vast minority of the community and not really a large enough group to be focused on. Also, what shape should these upgrades take? Would they just be more levels to the existing upgrades, or new ones entirely? Me and Bobo have some ideas, which we'll be talking about in a future video. I think really an entire video on its own should be spent on this topic, but I really think we as a community should consider how much would this actually change, and if we actually want to see this go through, we should try to unite behind several good ideas of what shelter upgrades should look like, instead of us wildly spitballing ideas all across the globe and, just throwing piles of ideas that aren't really unified in any way. But moving on from shelter upgrades, what else can be done to try and create an endgame? Well, one possible solution could be an overhaul to the food system. The food system as it is only really exists to get crates and otherwise is completely pointless. An overhaul of the system could be really complicated, but if done correctly, could really help create an endgame, and it's really could be a game-changing mechanic. Food is much more finite than guns and materials at this point in time. If we're worried about people with giant stockpiles, then a simple buyback event followed by a wipe of all food could fix that problem pretty easily. The finite nature of food allows it to hold true value that materials and rarity at this point severely lack. So what can we do with this value? Well, first of all, we could use it as a currency for exchange, allowing people to present large amounts of food in exchange for rare items. This would be piles of ammo, gold guns, and consumables. However, this wouldn't really offer an endgame and instead would offer a new field of progression. While that is cool, we should try to consider an alternative that could help the endgame. We could continue with this currency concept and have them be used to purchase extremely expensive cosmetics, expensive as in a lot of food to buy. But if using food as a currency doesn't really work with you, we can also consider using food as a different form of progression, as I said earlier, but more so geared towards the endgame. Introducing a system of dumping food into upgrades, perhaps a shelter upgrade where you have a giant amount of food need to be dumped into that upgrades that shelter upgrade so you can produce materials, guns, or whatever. Or maybe a vendor of sorts where dumping food upgrades their affinity, raising their level, and possibly unlocking new things for you to purchase, or perhaps these upgrades could unlock you new mementos, cosmetics, or clues to quests. Really just using the finite nature of food into something to create an endgame grind would be something I think is a great move. But if overhauling useless systems isn't your cup of tea, then there is a simpler answer: prestige system. And this is also greatly popular within the community, and I am also very much in support of this concept. Allowing players to wipe their progress, revert their shelter progress, material count, and weapon collection back to nothing, while leaving their plans, cosmetics, and their crowns, obviously, and you offer a reward being either, a bundle of crowns, a title, a cosmetic, or literally anything, and you see how many players would be willing to wipe. Self-imposed wipes could fix a lot of Vigor's current issues, but the big issue would be what rewards do you get for this self-imposed wipe, because the rewards would need to be great or else most players would simply choose not to do it, and it would be a pointless addition to the game. But if done correctly, it really could create a very beautiful endgame for a lot of players as they try to get the highest prestige level. Following this concept, we can turn to quests. I talked about this idea in a previous video. To put it simply though, they could create more activities to do and give more meaning to play. Adding endgame quests with high difficulty and long grinds could create the basis of a solid endgame through the grind it would promise. And I think that's just something would be interesting. I think a lot of people would like that. Finally, I'd like to put forth a concept put forward by VSL's own human person, the idea of legendary items. Legendary items would be items that you couldn't craft and you could only loot them. This would create a forced scarcity of them, and in exchange, these could be heavily buffed versions of existing guns with enhancements on these guns that people have wanted, such as scopes on bolt actions and large magazines for the Thompson. This forced scarcity of a weapon would create a grind to acquire these great weapons, and in exchange would create a proxy endgame of sorts. And if whatever thoughts you have on that concept, please send them over to Human Person, and I would really like to continue dialogue with him, because he has, I think, quite an interesting idea. All in all, though, there are a lot of concepts that can try and fix the lack of endgame we have right now. All of these concepts have their pros and cons, and all of them would require piles of dev resources to pull off. But an endgame is needed, so hopefully the dev resources are put into one of these concepts, and hopefully it's your favorite concept, whatever that may be. And even if it isn't long, like as much endgame as we really thought, we really need something endgame wise, and when it arrives, hopefully the community feedback is very positive so we can get more. Because the endgame is something that has been needed since this game really went into like 1.0. But those are all my thoughts on what we could do to fix the endgame. If you disagree, say so in the comments, or you can talk to me on my Discord VSL. It's linked in the description. But this has been Crystal Beast, and I hope to see you all next time.